Okay, I'm going to get the meeting started. So, unfortunately, Dr. Liu, our chair, could not make it today. He had an emergency, so he wasn't able to make it in. So he asked me, and I got permission from our council to go ahead and chair the meeting today. So we'll start off with call to order and opening remarks. I have no opening remarks. I'd like to move to approving the July 29th meetings. Do I get a motion? Are there any first of all, are there any corrections? I'm sorry. I think
Ah.
she has a question.
On when we were discussing agenda on air quality management,
Could
it's on. So you need to move closer.
around.
Okay. I had it was noted. We just met better that was organizations and did request that perhaps individuals want to join in their efforts, but I think I also suggested perhaps this evening to environmental groups have to distribute copies each. I didn't say it's sitting at some point. That.
Yeah, I'm going to have as an advisory group able to do that.
Oh.
Let's get back to email next week. Then I'll let you know if we can do that, then we'll go ahead and search. Then we'll move that way. Okay.
Great. Just copies were distributed to members that were present.
So you want to get to the minutes? What item that again? Okay. Well, we got a note on the members. Sure. Any other questions of minutes? Motion to okay, we'll go ahead and approve this. And I have to ask for forgiveness. I forgot to have here. You didn't introduce. And before me, I'll do start with Angelo.
Angelo Logan, Community Environmental Justice and Urban Environmental Policy Institute at Oxford College.
I'm Jill Johnson, a professor at University of Southern California.
With Valley
Off of this to introduce himself.
Riverside.
Good afternoon.
Corey, South Coast AQMD.
South Coast AQMD.
Rafael.
Member is Dr. Monique Hernandez. Castell also your class. Actually, I would give presentation to a couple about a or so, right? And he's graciously to say a few words about.
I'm an Occidental. I've been learning more about teaching this course. My background is geography, and so how important it is to especially for minority communities. So thank you so much for having me here.
Public Health, Loma Linda University.
Okay. Item number 3 is action items. So the first one is on document the dates for 2017 Egypt advisory group are on the table, so you should have those. And then last item, which we're going to have a presentation on shortly, is going to requested that staff share with demographic information for persons participated in the item. And for those of you familiar with a program that is able to get older cars, more polluted people for just communities, people who live in those communities that they're in your car or in your car. And when I say new, it happened in 2000, you up to $9,500 for and it, so those are the action items. At this time, I updates. Oh, okay. Sorry, we have Mike Krause has to give his presentation because he has to be, so at this time, take it out of order. Number 5, and we'll come back to 4, Michael. He's very animated. Probably the best presenter at AQMD. I always love to hear his presentation.
I thought he was going to say, Mike needs to go first because he's a prima donna, but he didn't say that, so I skated through that.
Well,
Sorry
Mike,
about that.
I may have been thinking that. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for not expressing it. Okay, very good. Yes, as requested from your advisory group last time, to come back and give you guys a periodic update, because I know you don't meet necessarily monthly. So we're going to catch you up on where we're at right now with the revised draft 2016 AQMP. So I thought what we'd touch on real quick is just to kind of look at some new number that we just got in. I have to coordinate myself here. All right, there we go. So as you recall from the last meeting, we are examining 5 ambient air quality standards in this plan. So there are 3 ozone standards we're looking at, the 1-hour ozone and the 2 8-hour ozone standards, as well as the 24-hour PM2.5 and the annual PM2.5. So what this chart is showing you, however, is basically the trends that we're seeing over the years. So we mapped these out since going all the way back to 1995 into the current data we have now from 2015. And as you can see, we've got this really great downward trend. So this is really good. You'll notice probably a little bit of bump ups occasionally, and of course that's due to times, like in the recession and what have you, where there wasn't as much control. Okay, again, those are the standards. I know you guys have seen this slide before, but I just wanted to remind you of the 5 standards we're targeting in the current plan. And what you're seeing here are the targeted criteria pollutants on the left. The next one is actually the number of the standard, what our classification is, and this is really important because those classifications are telling us just how much work that needs to get done. When we're in extreme, we're in the highest away from meeting that standard, which means it's the most work we need to do to meet that in the timely manner. The next one is the latest attainment date the EPA has set out for us to meet. Last column is, okay, don't look at the last column. That were the dates. Due dates for the actual. As you can see, we've surpassed 2 of those so far, but again, we are the intent is here in this plan to catch up. If you have any questions about what that means, we can discuss that, but I won't. Yeah.
Really quick, can you just announce that we made some changes and we have it on the desk? We made some changes to the PowerPoint, and we have a copy of the most updated one, I believe, on the desk. Do you want to raise your hand if you didn't get a copy, and I'll come bring you one?
Right. So what Danielle is referring to is that when we provided this presentation last week to her, that's the one you actually see in your package. However, since then, Henry and I have been busy working on updating to get you guys the latest and greatest information. And so there is the new updated version. We apologize for that. You've seen this slide before, but again, I'd like to reiterate, especially for Dr. Monique, because she wasn't here last time. So, but this is a really cool chart there, Monique. So what we're looking at here is on the blue lines are the NOx emissions. Now, NOx is the pollutant that's basically the driver for us to meet the ozone standard. And what you're seeing here is dating back to 2012, which is our base year. You'll see the amount of pollution. That's 529 tons per day of nitrogen oxides. And over time, because of existing rules and regulations, we'll be reducing those NOx emissions in our basin. But what you're looking at here is us not doing anything. This is exactly what will happen with air quality over time, given the existing rules and regulations. Now you say, oh, cool, we can just kick back then, right? Not really. Because those green lines show us where we need to be in order to meet the 8-hour ozone standards. That's in 2023 and 2031. As you see, they're a lot less than those blue lines, so there's work to be done. 43% reduction in 2023 and 55% reduction, in 20, my eyes are bad, in 2031. There's one other standard that I mentioned already briefly. It's just the 1-hour ozone standard that was established by EPA back in 1979. And that, to meet that standard in 2022, which is our attainment date, it's a little bit higher. This is why the EPA argued back in 1997 that by establishing an 8-hour ozone standard, it would be more stringent than a 1-hour standard. You can see that demonstrated here on the chart. But anyway, we'll have to meet that that pink line as well. But we look at it, I didn't put the trajectory lines in there. But if you look at the trajectory lines going downwards, we believe the ozone strategy we've established to meet the 2023 will then clearly meet the year before, well within the pink line there to meet the 1-hour ozone standard. To give you a sense of when we discuss this, has always been a big issue about what we have authority over, which is stationary sources, and a limited authority over mobile sources. To give you a comparison, in 2012, this is sort of the breakout of those nitrogen oxide emissions and how they fall between what mobile sources contribute, which is 88%, versus the stationary sources. As we enter into this plan, the question was, what's the overall strategy? How are we going to tackle meeting the standards? So what we're looking at here is the bar chart here where in 2023, the height of that bar is what the emissions, the NOx emission reductions we need. We broke it out to kind of give you an idea of the work that's already been established. The blue are the existing regulations. So there's been a lot of work we've already done, and we'll be seeing the benefits of those in those future years, and that's the blue section. However, we've also got some new proposed regulations. That's the orange slice there. We are going to be looking at federal sources reductions. Federal sources are aircraft, ocean-going vessels, and locomotives. And then the yellow section has been the most talked about section. Those type of measures which we're trying to drive through incentives, accelerating the deployment of cleaner vehicles sooner than we would have if we didn't provide something to incentivize and get them to change out quicker. Possibly due to things like it might not be cost effective, it's not feasible in all areas, it's not all commercially available for applications. But it's kind of like with the electric car. You don't have to get an electric car. There's plenty of fossil fuel burning cars out there, right? And they're getting better in efficiency, right? So why bother? But if you got an incentive, if you turn around and the Fed say, hey, I'm going to give you a $7,500 tax credit, aren't you kind of incentivized? I know I am. I put my $1,000 for the cheap Tesla. So, it's going to take me more work. I got the condo building to set up the hubs and do all the stuff. But guess what I'm doing? I'm stirring interest. We now have 4 people in our building. It's not very big. It's only like 30 units. But we got 4 people now that wouldn't be interested otherwise because they didn't know about it. And they've incentivized them to drive them in a good direction. Yes.
So these, that chart basically shows what the regulations are that we're aiming for and will be, hopefully. But where does it say where we actually are in terms of meeting those regulations? Is there a way to see that?
Right. So back under this one, is this is telling us where we would be with the existing regulations in the blue, and then what we need to do to meet.
Yes.
Okay, so in those future years, we would be at that blue bar.
No, I'll be
Right.
right now, though.
Where we're at now. Where are we now?
For example, that blue bar,
Sure. Sure. So you'll see the blue bar right there on the 2016 year, and that's the value right there. So somewhere around 400
that's our actual,
NOx
oh, okay,
emissions.
I see.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. Now our stationary source approach. We know this has been.
Can you tell us, I'm sorry, what the standard is? So if we're up for today, what are we supposed to be meeting?
Well, those are emission values, right? So the standards are based on concentration.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of apples and oranges. I mean,
How is it to be, you know what I'm saying?
so remember how we get to we determine what the actual content from nitrogen oxide sources and compound sources, right? Put those into the model of meteorological conditions, blah, blah, blah. That's how we come up with in all different air stations what the concentration is. So it's something that needs to be modeled in order to, come up with what that value. But we know that so that's why we show for those the maximum amount of emission reductions we can get from that pollutant.
So today our ozone levels are in the 100 parts per billion, and we need to get to 80 parts per billion to meet the 2023 standard, and 75 parts per billion to meet the. So if Mike had a chart that showed all the different levels, 100 some odd parts per billion. So we have ways to go. A bar chart represents the emissions today. In my description, we take those emissions along with the hydrocarbon emissions. We do computer simulation modeling to demonstrate what levels of emissions we need to be at in order to achieve those standards. And Mike's we need to reduce 43% of our NOx emission from that 2023 level in order to attain the standard in 2023.
And if you want to equate it, Angelo, back to emissions, so in 2023 it's around 150 tons
Of reduction.
down to 100. Well, the carrying capacity. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For the 2023 year, okay? And that will start out at 264, around 264, beginning in that year, if we didn't do anything. So obviously we want to do things to get that down to the 150 seamlessly. When you talk about the 2031, that's about around 100 tons per day of nitrogen oxide emissions we need to meet. Yes, Raphael?
Hi. So, Michael, I was, as I'm looking at this, of course, the main goal is to reduce ozone emissions and all that other stuff. Now, I know that your graph goes ahead and talks about the NOx emission stuff, but of course, over this past year, we did the natural gas and the methane and the thousands of tons of methane gas release, and it's kind of hard to look at that and what impact it's had. When we're looking at NOx, how does that play into our overall goals of achieving? If we go back to the second graph that you have, we know that a lot of this stuff has long-lasting effects, and then in addition to that, I heard in the news about the possible elimination of the California cap and trade on carbon credits and whatnot, and moving to more of a command and control type of scenario. So can you explain kind of how that all ties in to your presentation here and how we're going to achieve those goals? Raphael, I'll take a shot at it first. And since we've been involved with the Air Resources Board and Low Carbon Fuel Standard, let's want to keep in mind that ozone formation are due to nitrogen oxides and hydrocarbons. So methane has a very low, but the methane is more significant with climate change.
So that's the impact would be on climate change. Our AQMP is looking at attaining the ozone, hydrocarbon, and nitrogen oxide. For the recent releases of methane out of Aliso Canyon, that has a greater impact on climate change. And so the Air Resources Board, the South Coast KMD, will look at this issue and seeing what needs to be done to ensure that those type of leakages won't occur. But it is a climate issue and not much. We want to keep those two.
Right.
Right. And then when it comes to the discussions of low carbon fees, transportation funding and trade, those discussions will occur at a level, and it's not where those are headed right now. But definitely the thought that the market is not there right now, we don't know because we have to see what the next cycle looks like. Is really going to take a look at that lead on that.
Okay, we have a lot of discussion about our stationary source approach. I think I touched a little bit on this, but just to and also highlight some that we've made release of the document, and these two we're starting to see by document. But on the stationary approach, again, we did an evaluation of our inventory, and then by looking at the NOx inventory, we then group the sources of what kind of control measures we can develop in order to make the best reductions we can. Some of those areas, however, all the news, refinery flares. I mean, that just sort of seemed like, as Raphael just noted, you burn, now you have a nitrogen oxide, and now concern. Which, of course, early on during the Aliso Canyon issue, we were thoroughly against that because that would have been a problem. So some of the other areas, we look at cooking appliances. There's a lot of NOx as well as some PM 2.5 control that we could get from those. We also look at our favorite topic, the reassessment of reclaim, a series of recommendations we had moving forward to look at what kind of could be in both a commercial and a residential setting, with a furnace, an oven, what have you. And there's been discussions, of course, about what to do with the large number of diesel backup generators out there. We recognize some places like Essential Public Services, they may not have that privilege to switch into something like electric, because obviously if there's a power not make it through the night. All right. So these are some of the key comments we received on the draft plan. And you might have, but overall we sort of just culled this down. Now mind you, these aren't all the we sent comment letters on the draft document. And comments for each letter, there's a lot of actual comments being made. A trend, something comment letters writing about the same thing, we wanted to group those up to show you. But it was interesting because as we kind of walked through, we saw two different sides. For example, in the overall strategy, support incentive programs. However, there's also programs we're kind of giving a pass basically for an actual permanent minutes. Fair share. There's also been an issue getting enough of the that we need in our local region. Will the burden be turned onto the local stationary sources? We've had a long ongoing policy when it comes to technology or fuel on these issues. However, when we start looking for the reductions, there seems to be a clear endpoint of zero emission technology. The question is that actually not actually taking. Facility-based measures are something that we have a heightened interest in, and we have, of course, proposed in the letter concerns with facilities, placing targets, or even suggesting fees as mitigation. So that discussion is ongoing. Some other comments that people about clarity, or what do you mean when we say to be determined, and the concerns about what we're proposing under and some other modeling. So one of the first things we did was, through a lot of negotiation and discussion, our reductions utilizing zero emission whenever cost-effective feasible, remaining applications. And I know this seems kind of wordy, but this is really important. The key is in the words, because this is how we think we move ahead in a good compromise applications to effective or feasible to at least move. However, we want to make sure that prioritize that, though. Make that your first, and if not, what's of course the people have about the angle. So we looked back at 3 of the stationary source incentive measures. Those incentive measures said, we can see it would be reasonable making an element in the those there. With regards to the incentive, it was important to clarify to people that the idea of advanced deployment of these cleaner technologies is critical. The short term 2023, that's 7 years, 66 goals we want to meet. We also utilizing things like incentives, we can enhance the public stability technology and available more feasible applications. It also competition. Somebody else is going, oh, that's going to be selling a lot. Maybe they want to jump into the game. So I think that's really seriously consider looking at the reclaim program. We did propose this initially, but we beefed it up a little bit. Transition to a more command and control program for the facilities. And certain some specific facility-based measures. In addition, more discussion, the idea of expanding new fleet rules, which we have authority over. Determined, and then we updated things like the air quality.
Specifically, with regards to the additional regulatory, looking at CB1 in terms of combustion engines and diesel backup. Yeah, one of the things that I feel is there's so that everyone to the EPA's latest and greatest stuff comply with what's gone into effect as just point that technology is just not widespread, and then that it's really kind of unclear as far as for how possible no dates that are set in stone for to essentially change their equipment. Done is just for hours that you can maintain like that. So too long, because right now people are non-compliant in their position. Two, you have 3, you had tier 4 final, but until a year or even 2 ago, equipment was still, even this year, even after you still have a tier 4 final claim, sold customer being permitted.
Raphael, the on-road and standard USPA actually adopted those plans for the state. Engine is may overproduce the next line of the regulations. So when it comes to backup and market, that. So what we're looking at is how we have to buy, but especially a generator that's not so often, no one much money. The action plan will look at how we can incentivize people to buy the clean possible, which in case could be zero emission technology, but even 045 is all those aspects as part of our funding.
Just a suggestion, you know, if, if there be some sort of partnership with the local companies, if there is generally industrial, they're not they generally tend to be within a certain industrial park or you know certain groups and if you know one very different each set of letters, perhaps you know the staff or standby electric generator to power their, their that way you know the load is one but you know, just
The great suggestion in our energy we talk distributed generation is more small areas, especially in emergency situation. If there's backup storage for generators and engines, that some
So the details to this idea about the of these diesel what happened during the so, okay, back here, I just wanted to give you guys a little overview then of our current activity. We did plan on something again. We had 7 but technical appendices those are also available online. The next one, next slide. Okay, I just want to note that all a list that were done. I think my boss wanted the mission thing for being interested in. I provide a series of the actual individual revisions in the revised plan. I want to provide the public a lot of options. Also in the revised plan, we did a strikeout underline, you know, based on those that will have read and reviewed the full draft, which I expect everyone here has to see the changes. Okay, again, that Henry will go over. On the CEQA end, programs that closes on November 15th, for instance. From the CEQA alternative. We'll be conducting some public hearings next month. That's line. Not quite sure if we've sent it out to this group, but we can I'll resend that out so you guys can get notices of those hearings occurring. We'll be presenting a petition on the revised plan. The state will also be doing on the strategy, and we'll discuss health effects as by the California meeting since the release of the draft version. And Secretary did count the other day. In June, conducted 163 stakeholder meetings. So, last thing I wanted to go over, of course, is the schedule and advisory. We're seeking comments on the revised draft at the beginning of November so we can try to incorporate those into the draft final. That doesn't mean that people still can't comment on the plan. People can comment actually all the way up to the board date, but we just can't guarantee, of course, that any of those comments would be able to be incorporated in the actual plan if one waits late. With regards to 2 appendices, I just want to highlight the modeling appendices, and it does kind of follow up a little bit later than everything else. The reason for that is it's a very large appendices, about 500 pages, but it has a very detailed analysis of the actual attainment demonstration model runs. So it's a lot of technical data, and I just wanted staff to make sure that when we release the revised version of that, that we have the latest modeling runs in there for people, that we're not just sort of just changing a header and sort of repackaging it out for people, that it has some meat to it that you could read. The other appendices is one that deals with Clean Air Act requirements, and we've been working with EPA since that draft version on some of their suggestions, so I want to get that revised and sent that out as well. Again, associated ongoing, CEQA, public hearings. We're seeking to try to get a draft final plan out early December, and right now we're on calendar for the February governing board to consider approval of the plan. Because I have to run, if you have any questions up to now, I can field those. If you think of something later, Henry's good to go.
Danielle, or email Daniela.
Yes, or email Danielle.
So, the how do you how do you get it possible? Do you make that part of PMP and is included in the SIP and Cleaner Act to have enforceable measures?
So, the discussion Chair for on voluntary measures and incentives, and he has been provided their thinking on how these type of emission reductions could in the SIP. So as we move forward with in fact, our mission 14 is the recognition program and the emission reduction benefits associated with the program. That EPA cannot write the SIP some formal method reductions will continue to occur in the future. They do not occur to make further reductions. There's 6 only said as an overall guideline approve these emission reductions in the SIP. If we don't have money secured at the time, people treat that more like a 180 type of approach. And as we move forward with implementation, identifying additional funds, we grant for cleaner vehicles, put it into the so mechanisms for doing this, but an upfront assurance. So when it comes to the facility base, where we're looking for voluntary actions that could be occurring at the facilities, that we have real options couldn't set up, they would have the element approach. To take some time next year after the adoption of the AKP to work with stakeholders, facilities, see if we can identify the issues. At the same time, we'll be working on additional funding and sales funding. And the discussion is that you will process, and if progress is not shown, we would likely recommend a change. As the one work under with AKP.
So I just raise a concern. I think that working above and beyond reaching standards that are supposed to be health protective is a huge risk. The fact that if not achieve those standards, then the next 2 years of development lungs for children that live in the basin. It's a real concern that we're putting children's health. I really think both of my standards and above and beyond. We should provide.
When we with stakeholders, regardless, at the end of the day, it can be an actual language, or it could be other mechanisms which have the provisions necessary, similar to. So you're not just voluntary actions that could occur. We will be formulating a regulatory approach. It would still be the same. We have open to try and verify these actions will occur. But as our I think we will pivot and but we will be looking at as part of us. So we're not slowing down on that part. But the part is that we really need to reductions occur. As it's going rulemaking process and not through this discussion about actions that will be occurring and about rulemaking, it'll take us a couple of years to rule. It'll take us another year to implement the rule. So we use to balance term to try and apply all those things that could be done. But in the day, all the rulemaking, we don't recommend that anymore.
So what do you rulemaking and provide the
So our experience with the back rule has been more of an contentious approach that stakeholders, this is a rule, and the private sector all resist rulemaking. So they're not going to volunteer any action during this time. And that's kind of our problem with this voluntary this trust your safe do right things, verify that they're credible, and pivot to regulatory if those things aren't allowed. So that's a parallel approach we want to work with, but at the same time we may do rulemaking. So we're not going to one over the other. We keep doing our law.
what symmetry would allow pivot to rule like the China that be enough sliding
Can be one. The reports are coming out with the clear action in the next weeks, and we'll encourage to provide actions that with that in their authority that will reach attain equal times. So we hope that they might be aggressive. And the Port of is some bullshit from there. This this is full the city and place the ports under sustainable freight act and to meet certain standards. So they are public moving forward with zero emission. I don't know that is exactly yet until we see the document coming out, but we will be commenting that they could be more effective, and that's part of the what the recently reported study and proposed set of metrics that could be used gauging progress. All of that is our point, and how that could be incorporated. So there are down that we got, and we built the public process. It's a very open, transparent process that we have engaged on the regulating environmental and community organizations part of that. And naturally, with time, especially when we're
And just back on to Henry's point about the listing of the integrity elements, etc. in chapter 4. So we did those and have in the appendix 4A. Okay, so take a look at starting on page 4. We worked with EP on developing this language in here, and I hopefully provide some kind of understanding, reassurance kind of process. It's not sort of willy nilly that it is something we are planning to lay out. Have guidelines. Get track of those people like and have our information. So just wanted to that.
I just want more comments, and I'm very concerned about that as well. When we talk about stakeholders, family children that we represent, especially in environmental justice. I think we need to all keep them in mind. And if it's necessary to us, the time it might be
It's not beyond what's necessary because well, essentially ruling mode. It's just that we're doing parallel. That's we and we will be at if we ready to go where we're making after the year. We're not in that process. And I didn't want to comment, and we put in our measures for the mobile. They're really to help implement the strategy. They have the further deployment measures where most of the reduction commitments are, and they identified South Coast State Kim CPA and to implement the further measure. They looked at four things. One is funding. Second, to develop regulations on new technologies that commercialize operational agencies in these sectors. Can they still identify? And fourthly is to look at interpretation of connected vehicles. Things are not quantified at this time. There's a lot of work to see if we can quantify the emission benefits. Those two, because we're late, we will producing this action plan that I'll talk about in a second, but also this base measure are really to implement for the deployment measure. And states committed to those emission reductions. So they are really stop achieve the reductions that or they will step in because they are really those reductions. That's why you don't see emission reduction commitment in our local facility measure because we're implementing the measure. So they are also the committed to those reductions.
Just again, dovetail off of what Andrew was saying. The thing that concerns me is, the area is I understand going through all kinds of changes, expansion, continued construction, and then along with the initiatives and incentives and what they're building out there. The thing I'm seeing more is a lot of transfer over to the Commerce Rail Yard and the increase in truck and trailer traffic. Now, as I go down to and I travel, see a lot of stuff on the vehicle. But yet closer to the Commerce Rail Yard, I don't see that. Larger, older, more polluting. And see, this is just coming off those rails, Commerce Rail Yard. Then I see out of the port of LA. My concern is while one getting incentive and push all that other stuff from different that happened, 2 decades. Really an expansion of that yard by over 200. So those are the concerns and those are things that closing. We have a community there that's very family oriented, developing young kids, and these are already identified as the targeted group in terms of cancer risk, mortality rate, high directly attributed to the traffic, the railroads, and all that stuff. So it's important that the incentivizing that perhaps we already know that the rail yards, it's a whole different, not under EQM's jurisdictions, rather a federal thing. Or that we work, that you guys work along with your federal partners on the rails, because it just seems like getting out of hand.
I mean, it's one, two, and how important it is to do things to move. There's grants that we get to, you know, get it with, but they're really not interested in that up and do something about it because our level is pretty over them.
Things on the locomotives there, and we have a little bit of movement in terms of being an opportunity to do a for locomotives. So that's a positive step, albeit it's a very small step relative to the bigger pickup. The MOBO2 base approach rail yards, and this is one reason why we wanted to approach, because of reaction on locomotives that the railroads are do anything, and we can't tell them that as a fair. So, but we do know we have a role in to bring in cleaner tier locomotives sooner than they have. And the other thing, this subject is the regulation will only requires the 2000 emission level. And it won't be until 2019 to 2020 they will get the 20 emissions in place of the state level. And that's why we worked hard in the US EPA to develop an ultra low NOx emissions as early as possible. And it looks like the state, in fact, the workshop is November, look at establishing ultra heavy duty engines in the state. What we want nuclear is important in the early portions of
Now, it's my understanding that, right now, I guess, they're sulfur fuels for freight ships and not. Is that being or has it been implemented within the locomotives and all that stuff? Low sulfur fuel in order to help reduce in the end.
They are purchasing the same fuel that on-road diesel trucks are using. The not official standard change over the years to require them, which are the requirement now that they 1% of sulfur fuel content. So that's occurring is really trying to get to the NOx side of the engine.
So Michael,
You guys don't meet all the time, so it's a great holiday.
thanks, Michael. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I want to make Henry give a briefing, so we'll go to that and action item. Did we give EJ?
Is the word for
Yes.
so it's about what the decision process to either move forward on an approach or eliminate an approach one direction. The board is making a decision. Brown Act kind of like who's making the decision?
So staff is drafting the AP based on comments received. They staff. As Mike mentioned, we're comment and we're taking verbal comments at the same time for 7th, so that uh, the comments, consider those comments and potentially they can be 10 comments, and we'll have what's called draft final that will consider for 60 days. In the midst of that, we will be hearings. We only have a board member from the region to attend on November 15th and 17th on the schedule that Mike provided. And the regional public hearing requires under federal law that we hold the hearings to get more evidence. And so staff will have a proposed draft final can board and alternatives can definitely include a project alternative, which is no adoption of an AKMP, could be full rooming. And so we're looking, and then it's not like necessary to change those alternatives. So all that information is provided to the board, and we still take to the time of the board meeting. And at the time of the board could adopt staff recommendation, or they can for additional changes. So those things could occur at the time of the meeting. Please, this for their consent about the
Also committees, and there's for the okay.
Quickly, is there action on renewable energy sources
The
or
energy-
comment at all?
energy chapter, and I don't have it in this chapter devoted to energy and renewable energy. All different types of renewable sources and feedstock, renewable natural gas out waste, biodigest, and so really technology for natural gas, like what we're doing. There's still has renewable natural gas be fed into the pipe. It's very strong. Also, that energy source can lead to reduction of also. And we're also looking at diesel fuel. Side diesel is a little bit different, and for engines and vehicles that have engines that do not have on them, there are indication that NOx emissions can go down with these renewable diesel fuel, and according to the state strategy, renewable fuels. But if you look and
I'm going to continue.
for staff to come before the group about this, what we call in South Coast there, and place your right implementation of the state's program. Years. He's 15, and at that time, yeah, in applications, and they primarily grassroots community work and to outreach to and like in narrow program. And since they have over I say 1 years applicants to newer, either a conventional vehicle, it's easier to newer. You get more money is a conventional hybrid, have greater fuel efficiency, and more money if it's plug-in hybrid. Okay, battery electric vehicle. About $500 mentioned earlier. We also have the guidelines go to the and in cities. And, 40% of our population live in a community. Other than 4 of consumers, a very high number. So when we look at income graph, their level of income household at 225% below the federal poverty level. We have 80% of those followers from that income category. But the very programs have 300%. So 3%. This is really geared towards and so to list to start everyone and not have sufficient that happens recently finding the operation for funds that the Air Resources Board has their board $1 million towards creating another $1.7 million program. So the 15 million go a long way out. On the way, as first, we won't have anyone with us anymore. They're on the process. 1,000 applicants. Funds, the types of vehicles that's and they indicate that there will be no funding at the next thing if we need funding, we'll look at events. And every 1 week, 100 new applications. We don't have to do a reach program or that's really helped in our program. Given compared to their we're seeing most of the so with this new round of funding, we want to do a little bit more outreach and Orange County on this program. So that's our step moving forward. Is our to fund new pricing.
I very good by the way.
It was
Guideline
final 25% and below the it is a first level low income and from 300 to federal poverty. We have these coverage and the federal policy also based on number of members and chose for member to a single family member up to 8 family members. Those are and unfortunately I don't have in front of me. I don't but those are available.
out of the bracket, which one has most
That's 89% of the vouchers.
I just never know that. But if you website just to take a look and online, go to and you can take a look and yeah,
Actually, and so if you're just and two, so if couples and below and quite low bracket, if up to 1,050 and 400% and below for 495,000. First, these for them is considered so for as I mentioned, 89% of vouchers today are low. So it is a program that's working, and the songs are doing this program for put money into the program to schools, but the rest of California.
go ahead. Andrew.
Also, it's important to note that in most cases, the finance because it's associated with a dealer are certified to. Is another layer that people not just cash for capital finance.
Example, Nissan Leaf is a 10 to 12 market, and with $9,500 in incentives, we bring that to 3,000. And so we see use Nissan Leaf going for about $10,000, a difference of $500. But to give an idea, should have the that the interest rate at 16%. Our average interest rate on the financing is 5%. So the consumers that do finance 5%, and paying so what's that financing level? So what has occurred actually is that more lower income part of the program because I base value of the value gives the dealership more certainty that the car will be off. In fact, part of our work is with called community our financial institution that with lower income residents to help the middle. So we've been working with those type of financial more surety that those loans would be paid.
Need to get like
Yes. On average, this thing being 97, we have because we wanted to take in some LVs higher frequency to alternative fuel, a battery check, and that's really from that. Newer are to be scrapped, put into the program.
Okay. And go over the.
Finish off
Oh, I'm
the-
sorry. Go ahead.
I'll be quick on this one. Bring up the I just want to talk about the financial incentives action plan that staff is developing. This is really to identify and develop processes identified in the AQMP. And in the AQMP itself, you'll see that in our analysis of what the funding levels that are going to be needed is something order of 10 or like 7 to 15 years. And of that 10 to 14 billion, to source replacement, and $1 to $2 billion for equipment cleanup. But and there's out there that besides background information, our board, what levels of funding we are receiving to date and how much funding have been awarded to give the public and the board an idea of what levels of funding able to achieve and implement over the years. Looking at the potential new opportunities of this plan, activities that we would in order to secure the additional funding, and of course the schedule and reporting to the board on progress programs. And this is a little bit different from what's in your package that was sent out last week. And we had a meeting of our governing board mobile source committee last Friday. Dr. Liu said on that, the complexity of looking at funding at various levels, national, state, and local, was pared down what the presentation and what you see in the package is really more complicated approach to that. The current year that the South Coast region has received, they're primarily from our Moyer programs. We have both a state Moyer program as well as our local Moyer program, which we call AB 923. And programs bring in about $56 million a year. So these are sustained funding levels. And there's our local government's program, AB 2766 program, as well as the MSRC, we have additional $37 million a year. And the last year of our Proposition 1B funding, and this year we're receiving $137 million to do grant awards to clean. And one of the elements of that is actually to fund the near zero type of trucks over the next recognition under Proposition 1B that we could do these type of low NOx engines, but they won't be fully commercialized until 2 or 3 years from now. Commercially available a natural gas engine at the near zero level, but that's for a smaller type of truck, either a transit bus or a refuse truck. It's not for over the road type of Class 8 trucks. The AB 118 program and low carbon transportation program, you see here what the state has statewide is about 25 million at the Air Resources Board, another 100 million from the Energy Commission. And of course, the low carbon transportation funding, the recent appropriation brought about 368 million statewide. Board. Staff, we put question marks here because those are competitive in nature. So we don't know exactly how much to the South Coast until after the awards are. But if we look, it's around $230 million a year that we have been the last 5 to 7 years. It's a pretty good amount, but we do need 10 to 14 billion dollars, which equates to about $1 billion per year. So let's take a look at the type of funds that are on the right or that would need actually create these new funds. And knows about the VW Center, and that was finalized just a few, probably $381 million that will come to the state of California. NOx emissions. That's a primary component with diesel is for to mitigate NOx emissions. The other parts of the settlements are for those people who bought a diesel powered VW can or on the vehicle.
With that, funds would not program for the AQMP.
That portion,
Not
not
that
that, it's 381 million. And there's a third point, zero charging infrastructure. I use the word here because most people think about electric charging station. They about 800 million to do these charging units, but the state is also looking at hydrogen as part of that. So the infrastructure will station as hydrogen fueling infrastructure. That's a third part component of the VW settlement. And there's, or I should say, negotiations with VW on a 3-liter model, and that's another potential programs and low carbon transportation. Comes our region for equipment replacement. We'll continue to state on those type of opportunities. The new ones that we're looking at include, as many of you know, when the ports implemented their plan back in 2006 and 2007, created the Clean Truck program, and as part of that program, they established for cleaners that are going out of ports at 5% of $35. Most containers are 40 foot, so that's $6. You look at a 20-foot equivalent unit. Look at the volume of containers go, and they report about TEUs. These are to the port. If we multiply $35, it comes out to about $385 that could be for incentive of just that type of program. Back in 2007, the then Senator Alan Lowenthal introduced the bill, which passed the state legislature that was not signed by the government. And but we think that there's a potential attack on the state level. It's even a greater perhaps at the national level. Congressman Lowenthal introduced a similar policy to look at a national container fee, and he is in support from Congressman on this. And there are several states supporting that type of bill for a national container fee. If it's national level, it's a little bit easier at the state level. However, the funds may not come directly. So you need to watch those type of programs on that. Can generate $185 million. Also looking at potentially registration increasing that amount. If it was simplified dollars per million vehicles registered in South Coast Air Basin, and that would result in $140 million a year in additional grant. SCAG has been looking at what's called a mileage-based user miles travel user fee. 2012 included a look at having such a mileage-based user fee. So it would generate almost 125 in revenues that can go towards improvement. The 4%, we're not competing with the 4-cent, but just a simple half-cent add-on that could result in about $1 billion per year that could go towards clean projects. So you can see for mileage-based, when we look at these opportunities, we're not so much talking about the challenge and the political sense. Some people what it needs are with the public and the board's consideration on what to make. So excise tax add-on, a 1 cent add-on to the buildings that or so in our region, results to $1 million. We even look at the potential for add-on at 1/100th of a percent. So it's a very small percent. It can equate to about $230 million. Obviously, property tax is one of those very formidable, challenging. There has a source. Last sales tax, a 0.1% increase can result in $7 billion in the sales, taxable sales of. I can take some questions.
Yeah, well, first of all, I know that some may be to you all. These are Henry said we have on the table about them. You know, I think probably some of you who are already may have heard the newspaper. You know, there's a registration increase, and we're very well aware of that. But we want to not only external with the stakeholders, but also about this, about what our challenges are. Our real challenges are, so, how are we going to be able to meet those? There was another one of my staff members sent me was a believe of cash talk. Government, they weren't meeting their goals. The federal government actually went in and they took for transportation project. So now the federal government's going in there and get their own plan on how that is going to be. What are the last thing to government our backyard tell us or tell businesses, you know, to best want to rather be out front about the problem front right there and come up with a solution how to get to that point so that we make our own decision. We come up with our own plan and come in. And
Yeah, more of a comment. The funding, potential funding opportunities are what you're looking at. And so there's just kind of program being a success. So codified concern. I just want to make sure that a rate and in the program these opportunities may not come. It's just a concern why and urgent health is much too precious.
Appreciate the comment. His comment at the most very get these programs going to say that he would like to see a strong solidarity of support from all to happen. Just without, in his mind, there's no chance of even getting one of these. But broad-based support, I think that provides a more assurity that things is really going to take that type of solidarity. And
before that, what is it, 35 states, is it?
33.
30 states, the federal attainment goals. So their future, our future is going to be also. So we're trying right now to address these issues because it's not just going to be us. It's going to be other states, other air districts in the other states. And if it's not addressed at a national level, there's going to be problems. The states go along with it, that's fine, go along with it at the state level, but something needs to be done. And AQMP, it's in draft, we're still getting the input into it, but it's going to be a roadmap how we want to get to, we want to meet those federal attainment goals. Retta, you had a question?
Somewhat along the same lines, but several of these look like they're consumer tax that sort of thing. I'm wondering what's the corporate share or contribution towards that aspect when we talk about involving all the state incentive. Is there a corporate that I'm missing, or is it just not here? And then my other might be some of these, like the vehicle registration tax or fee. Could we talk about of registration? For example, some people that buy $20 or has no big deal, but if your income, that we all know that we're this problem probably need to contribute to the solution in a more fair way.
A tiered system, like a tiered
Also,
system.
I think I'm looking for the corporate share.
So first, because Derek and myself and others in doing some more specifics on is a really a high dollars across the board can achieve this much, but we do recognize that the type of money that we're asking for when it comes to residents and that we may have to look. So we are sensitive to that, and we do want to look very close. This is really more from the high level look. On
One,
the,
something I don't know what we're discussing is if we move forward with the vehicle registration fee. So if your car 10,000 of DMV values your car, that's how they registration is going to be. So we go based upon that, and we may throw out a number of, say, if your car is $10,000 or less, fee increase. Or we could throw out a fee come up with, which I think is probably fair, that increase. But like you said, those who are able, whether it be new cars or expensive cars, but it's going to be not only just vehicle cars, passenger vehicles, be all the trucks when they get their tags renewed. So it's more than just the households, the passenger vehicles.
so on corporate, we didn't do anything specific for like a tax, but it would come. Actually, mentioned that Dr. Liu that has staff to look at an emission charge. So at that, but we haven't done anything specific to look on a corporate level. But when you look at the fleets that are associated with container fee, actually apply to the beneficial cargo owner, not to themselves. So what we see is that fee, when you consider the value of the goods that are in that container, it's very small amount on a per unit basis. So that's something that most likely can be passed on to the consumer. When 40% of the goods that come through our region go to the rest of the nation, we're paying for that and the rest of the nation at that level. And when it comes to registration fees, historically, there's a benefit when we do a surcharge, and that benefit has been delay. Well, you can get your small check certification put off for buying a new car, and part of that registration pay some dollars in luxury of having not to check for a few years, and that's the money that's actually in the program now. And that's how that's done. So we look for a fit that can help. Why we would get the additional dollars, but provide to the consumer. Corporate level is a little bit harder because corporates are self-generating. So we have to whether their program. I mean, most of them do not have vehicles to turn over, but they have employees that work for the corporation that drive older vehicles. So those vehicles replaced. Part of our, like our 2002, we have incentives to put in electric vehicle charging to incentivize these to drive emission vehicles to take transit and so forth. So those are ways incentivized through the corporate level, actually providing a fee, those type of initiatives.
Just to follow up, you said emission fee, in the context of, would
It
that be-
doesn't
would that be similar to a carbon tax or something?
be, but to have this, and since we're looking at criteria, it's really combustion. So to the extent that there's like a business corporation is in a it's really only have a boiler for heating and air conditioning purposes, there's really not much tax on emissions. So when Dr. Luke mentioned emission charging,
Wineries or?
Okay, any other questions before? Yeah, Raphael.
Hi. So I was looking at a lot of these in again, just kind of reiterating what everybody else is saying. A lot of, just kind of like viable. I know their potential sources, but viability is kind of out there. There's a few that kind of raised some questions that I had in terms of, like, for instance, the mileage-based user fee. Now, I understand Caltrans is looking at the whole mileage-based thing, road infrastructure, but when you tag the everyday driver, I think there's like a disproportionate type, if you will, or just most I think, and the older trucks, powered, engine, as opposed to gas, as we move, and this is one of the things that this funding issues is. That's why they're moving to the mileage-based system, is zero emission type of vehicles. So I understand what they're already paying incentive or a certain premium for the the zero emission type of ultra low type of emission vehicles, just better the environment and all that stuff. But yet when you tag on something like this, I think it's, if I had a zero emission, which I don't, but if I did, I had an ultra low emission vehicle. Why did I even buy my car for a newer car that pollutes a lot? This truck driving next to me that I have to roll up my windows because it's just really the amount of NOx and PM, emissions that these things are generating. So that's one. And of course, it's going to be a battle just getting somebody to plug that tracker into the system of your car just to keep track of the mileage that you're driving, which is kind of a iffy thing for me anyways. And then the vehicle registration fees is the promotion being had is, I mean, that's the premise of MTA, this proposition, in order to get us to be taxed for the next 40 years public transportation, but yet, I just don't, is viable, because a lot of these is going to have to go to the voter in order to get moved. So how is the district going to sell this? Mileage base, is that $1 billion figure based upon within the district itself, or are you making the actual entire state of that billion? How much is actually going to come to South Coast Air Quality Management District? So those are some of the figures and things that property taxes mean. I can tell you right now, it's not going to happen.
I mean, like I said earlier, Raphael, these are just suggestions. We got to look at them.
But
Now,
they have to be realistic.
they have to be, I truly agree with that, but we also have to have as much information as possible where the potential, and the key word is potential, that's what it says there, of the fund sources. They say that we're going to get those because I agree with you. Some of them are very difficult challenges. I think that if we don't have the discussion about it, then we're not being truthful with everybody about where are these potentials going to come from, and maybe we're going to be lucky and get one of them. Will understand and give us something, but we have to have this discussion about where these potential funds come from, and whether it be anyone from those lists or it could be the list where it's from. And but again,
Yeah,
full disclosure.
I get it.
It's full disclosure on this is gonna somewhere. It's everything, whether it's environmental justice, the pollution.
Yeah.
But the only way that we're going to be able to address those problems is to do drastic and something innovative, because this is not done before, and we got to come up with these solutions.
But again, the mileage base, is that miles driven within this, the district?
Tax analysis.
And
So
the state's already doing a pilot project on charging people. They have the GPS system. Now I agree with you. I don't want Big Brother looking at me and knowing where I'm going. Not that I'm going anywhere bad. I want someone, it's bad enough my daughters ask me where I go every day, okay? And they want to know everywhere I go, even when I go shopping to the supermarket, let alone Big Brother finding out where I'm going. But, again, it's about options. We got to have those options.
and on the mileage space, participant to see the person. So they're looking at this because it won't be just on passenger car miles, but obviously to allow for to have a different fee structure again, maybe be exempted depending on the details.
So even a tier based upon, because you guys have lots of data, maybe even a tier based upon how much pollution your vehicle is actually generating.
We actually discussed that. That's looking at, if I don't want to call it tax, the fee is higher for, let's say, trucks. It's for vehicles. That's why, like I said,
sellable.
this is something we have to discuss,
Yeah.
and all options have to be out there to have a meaningful dialogue, get meaningful input as to how to get to where we need to be.
Could I think really what he's trying to say, and what I'm going to believe, is that you don't want to put something on a plan that's going to defeat the whole thing. And I think that if this is out there, you're not going to listen to anything really else that we have to say. All the ones with the question mark and the ones with included the plan, and you get away with it. Those others and the new will have with that here, all this stuff, and it'll never get to all the propositions on the ballot and things.
Committee meeting, one of the discussions was the registration fee increase. Within a week, we got a call from LA Times reporter, and they did an article on it. And within an hour of it going up on the web, at least from President Pro Tem saying, basically over my dead body, you're going to get cash. We're looking at everything.
I think is one thing, but committing suicide is different. If we have to be smart about this. I think that would be in that kind of point, and you can slowly work yourself into the other thing. If you start with all these things, believe me.
So maybe if I can go to the next slide, I'll explain a little bit about the process. What are potential opportunities, as Derek mentioned, to start the discussion. What would like like to, actually, I'm going to skip this slide, which is other potential opportunities that but quantified at this time. But go to this slide, which is the item on that slide is the formation of a stakeholders working group. And what we were looking to do is we throw all these opportunities up for discussion. And through the working group, which will be broad based, yesterday at the AQMP advisory, we asked who would want to be on this committee work group. And everybody in the room raised their hands. So they all want to have some participation at some level. And through this working group, I think we'll be able to prioritize some of these opportunities. And it may well be what you just said, Manuel. They'll come down to those top 4 or 5, and maybe 1 or 2 that there are opportunities to pursue legislatively. And if we have both sides of the House and State Senate, the Assembly and the State Senate, and on national level, we have bipartisan support because the business interests are very interested in looking for additional funding, as well as the community to get these things going. So we think if we establish this working group and it's a public process, we'll hear not only like we're hearing today in the discussion of what could be done and what could be done maybe sooner rather than later. Because the mileage-based VMT user fee, SCAG is looking at starting that in 2025. So they're not looking to see it happening in the next couple of years, but it's a more long-term. So we have to lay out our resources because we won't be going after every opportunity. We need to look at the ones that are most likely that we can pursue. So that's the process we want to go through with the public and to get that type of input. Where what you see on the table is just one part of it. It's not every.
You know, also, would it make sense to hire an independent consultant firm to do this?
We have received comments that potentially we may
can
need
they-
to.
Just kind of interesting that they would seem to have more of a better input as to know what you need to.
So one thing staff indicated to, at least to the AQMP Advisory Committee and and our Mobile Source Committee is that the stakeholders working group will not be your traditional representatives from the various stakeholders who comment on AQMP, on rulemaking, or on the need for clean air. It's really the arms of these stakeholders who know how to do fundraising, who know how to look at ways in which they can bring about additional funding. So these are the type of people that are in various organizations that do these things. The stakeholder working group should be made up of those type of people to help us out. And of course, there was a comment made, will you include the community and environmental organizations? And the answer is definitely yes, because that provides a different type of comment in this process. But just like the comment about lower income people and how it should be structured, we need that type of input. So it will be broad-based, but the objective is to see if we can have a list of opportunities that we can prioritize and stakeholders agree those are things that can be done earlier rather than later, and those that can be done later we just put on the back burner because it'd be ideally if we can get $1 billion next year we can start the program, but we think it's going to be a gradual increase to that level over several years.
Monique, you have a question?
I just have a question to your point about stakeholders. To what extent does the South Coast funding opportunities that have worked, that are successful, or maybe I'm getting ahead of your presentation?
No, we're actually moving around this slide because Derek mentioned about national collaboration. We worked through CAPCOA, the state association of all the 35 air districts. So and we have worked very well together in the program. Instead of competing for statewide dollars, the CAPCOA members established a formula based on air pollution severity and exposure. And that formula has been in place for many years, that every year when the state collects their portion for the Moyer program, it's just allocated by that formula. And so we think on a national level, if other states have an air pollution problem, that if we have a collaborative, we wouldn't be competing. And so we can generate, maybe develop such a formula that makes sense.
And just to add to that, we submitted a petition to US EPA for an ultra-low NOx standard nationwide. And we got other air agencies throughout the country, as well as organizations to sign on to the letter. So hopefully, I think by next week, is it? They're supposed to, EPA is supposed to determine whether they're going to move forward with.
Sometime in November, we hope to get a response back, and it looks very positive.
Yeah.
And we're already starting to talk with the other 17 petitioners, and as well as the supporters, that we want to move ahead with this national collaborative and establishing a national funding program.
That's wonderful. And so other air agencies in the state have identified similar funding opportunities to the ones that we have here in this region?
Right.
Okay.
So we started to discuss with San Joaquin Valley about opportunities that we can work jointly on. And the Bay Area has signed on the petition.
Yeah, San Joaquin Valley has a similar, well, not similar, but they do have challenges just like we do. They have to meet their federal attainment. They're not going to be able to meet it. So they need to, we actually had a joint meeting here at the district with San Joaquin and some of their board members, some of our board members and staffs to discuss legislation, working together on how we're going to address these issues.
I don't think I'm going to say more about this slide, but just to conclude on this portion is a timeline of activities that we'll be doing over the next few months. We're hoping to get a draft document out for public comment probably towards the end of November. And this will be a companion piece to the AQMP. So we will want to bring this portion, this plan, along with the in February for our board. In the meantime, we do want to this working group probably in the December frame. Yesterday was let's do it in December because the sooner we can get something that can move forward. Of course, we do want to discuss what happens if the funding is not realized and what the impacts would be on. But we're hoping that this plan will be approved by our board, and after its approval, we can move full speed ahead to look at some of these funding opportunities and pursue those opportunities. And we hope that the members here today will be part of that collaboration for this funding. So, thanks.
Do we have any other questions for Henry? So item 6, this will be really quick. So item 6 is our goals and objectives for 2017. So item number 6. For discussion here at our meeting. So if anybody would like to add, please let me know. If you can get it to us in the next 2 weeks, all right. I need to solidify this on this or just no. It's a discussion. So what great and we'll make additions, deletions, and circle one time as and make sure that it's
years now. Program, one of the things that was being discussed, looking at the rules, see right there on the package that I gave you this morning in regard to the link. There's a very and with really very, and so we're about looking at that in terms of control and things. So I think if we can, take I think it is rules like 2003. I'm not sure of the rule number, but I think I have it on that post on that view. I can't remember which rule it is. Maybe I don't. I don't know. So in any case, the rule that 4 leaders.
Yeah, 1426, actually.
Yeah. So if we look at that, because we've discussed it for long, and yet we are the rule itself.
Okay. If you have any questions?
Hi. Question. In this outreach, talking about the filter programs and just because I don't see it on it, but maybe
Got that. That really in community also from Senate money and you know, again talk about it again. We have been done since last time. We have as you and there's any opportunity on the road to
that's something we pursue because all our plans are 2018, 2023. What of areas that are very blue, and that's my main program about community and warming all businesses, air conditioning units. We can help now for we have more kids that have asthma and additional respiratory problems. So I think that needs to plan as well. That we're educating, constantly educating, very to understand. I mean, it's been a little bit more. My mother don't clean their filters. What that's so I just wonder what outreach is. Station or any or sanitary hub. So I had wanting to educate the consumer or our resident base that is talking about what if we hated that many all the clunkers or the cars, that would help. We need to be proactive in educating the public and not just assume that it's going to happen through the LA Times or website. Well, let's go to the website and educate that way. So I'd like to know what we're doing for us mode to educate all. So I was at a clinic recently, and those filters were really. Fortunately, ours right now are clean, but there are times where even these filters. So I think that's things being corrected for next year.
Okay, sounds good.
Pilot program.
So we want
Yeah. So.
Sure. Yes, right.
Number 8 was actually
When, say, for instance, finance, they got to buy off unit, and so you can use for different things. Example is in this presentation, this group many of times with AB 1318 power plant project, where the power plant had to purchase offsets because they were going to be mid-NOx. So they paid for these offsets. It was a 51, 52. They paid what the agency did. What we basically offset those. Okay.
Typically, or a business significant modification to its operations, those new emissions have to be evaluated, and so it can be with emission reduction credits, or they can be in efficient equipment. So in a new business or in a district to the highest restrictions, and it'd be done through very different ways. It can be in the reclaim program, and reclaim credit five and to different kind of emission reduction. The thought process is, not add emission, but similar it's continuing to use as well.
And that includes technology used to reduce the emissions.
Yes. And rules is there are timelines. Some grandfathered, other may time out. And so it's all balanced with equipment as well. You know, I was kind of thinking of, as we went through the entire meeting, the focus is going to be on, targets of emissions and all others, intervention. And then probably if it's in, it's, about rapid, the things that have been nice to, like, for instance, is the need to report. Really what they're emitting, and I'm finding more and more as I read more and more into the various rules, and there's no reporting requirements. So there aren't any, or their grandfathers do not have reporting needed. So I think if the district's going to detail, perfectly aware of what's going on, and then actually and open their eyes, okay, reporting, and once we're able to get them to see what they're missing, and if you want to more of a partnership, then at least open their eyes to, hey, this is what what you guys are, and work ahead and reduce, and even minor changes. Those minor changes could represent huge reductions that the district wishes.
Mary, go right
I'm
ahead.
not going to get a chance to speak. No, not on you. First of all, congratulations on number 5 on having the Salton Sea on that's something outside of the greater Los Angeles area. But probably different places that you could have something the region could be listed on, any number of these. It's still probably be a really good idea to at least have something of the region in San Bernardino County, because there are issues out there around that area, the logistics center, that still is going to end up at some point currently based on current, approval by the council, and the agency had filed the whole process. I don't even know where that's at this point, and I know that there's ramifications on how much you can talk about that, but I think it's to the community, at least everything that I know and I hear, that like to know that somebody is looking out for some part of the air quality interest out there. And until now, has been some things that were happening even with the Riverside. They I don't even know if that but it would kind of have a update on where we're at with those issues. We've not gone away, and if anything, apparently, that would be great.
Okay, so I can give you the world logistics. Research was last week with the Valley, and the developer agreed to pay into a mitigation fund similar to what out in so it's going to be over. I think it's next 20 to 30. I don't want to quote the. It's like between 20 and $30 million going to be used for mitigation from there, and you know, now you see exactly where the money is going to go because it just got settled, and we have the parameters set up. You know, our hearing, but that issue was settled last week, and it's good because I think that there's whenever you go to court, there's a chance you're going to win, a chance you're going to lose. So I think both sides finally came to the understanding. It's better to set take that chance because it could go either way. And districts use funds for obviously information. So that's one. As for I think warehousing facilities, I think that's something we could put on here and talk about the indirect discussion on indirect social, where we're at with when we're forward, and talk like essentially. Oh, so yeah, I guess I could follow the last bullet, warehouse number that is going to affect the placement of warehousing, how we're going to
Okay, that'd be great. I probably have some on my other Inland Empire right here, but I think it's still probably would be a good idea to at least have something on the area. Even when we're talking about the settlement, even some the communication of what is happening, where it will still be a good thing.
Yes.
So if we could continue to at least acknowledge the fact that the Inland has its issues out there, we can't compete with Los Angeles.
No, you actually do compete with Los Angeles.
Exactly, saying that she's growing, and the available for that all the time as you're going out direction. So
I think one of the things out there when it comes to that is really and how's the counties, ultimately but our extremely limited as the next step. So we can provide guidance that is and
I'd like to put it as a line item here on the agenda, the proposed you have in our but now we have multiple warehouses that are in the area, and how is really going to have an impact impacting now and how is going to impact it in the future. So I'd like to be specific as one item on here.
So can I suggest that we do inland housing instead of San Bernardino because even
I think that we also have the train station impacts that way even further, and we have multiple train tracks around San Bernardino. They don't have it. So maybe Riverside is one and San Bernardino is the other, because in this whole discussion, you've got my memory needs.
We talk issues in right now, the logistics and the diesel trucks. Well, I think we need to do more to ensure that these trucks over where they don't do more emissions. So, is traffic. You bad traffickers, transportation patterns, and it's on the list there. And other hand, is a very well-known economist, and he always talks about we want more jobs, that a lot of the jobs are going to be in. So we do those things, and we talk about all warehouses go out, and is usually very opposed to that. And you see warehouse up everywhere, you know. So we need the and things we can, because if jobs is what I said, and then issues of emissions and traffic patterns.
Yeah, and be on the regulatory authority for mobile trucks, and you know, unless federal government does something, and there gets more strict, and as to we can actually do. Not say do that both in Washington and in San Francisco, and I think that it's but Linda doesn't mean action, so they need to step up, and they're said or get stricter on it, and that's what we want ultimately. Want to trucks off the road, and how about we don't have the authority, we can't whether it be if we're going to go the route, that's what we're going to do. That's what happened with, you know, some of the locals that we had to fund a or locomotive for the one of the rail.
SF.
Yeah, and if we're not incentivizing them, they're not going to do anything. So we're caught between a rock and a hard place. At least.
Just one more question. In the design, warehouses.
And that's not QMD issue.
But
oh, we can. Oh, there's guidance out there. We've given guidance. That's all we can do because we have no authority. We can't tell to, you know, put trees, kind of anything like that.
So that with even district or even you guys, you know, talk to them is it in a lot of these warehouses into like Riverside, Moreno Valley, outlier areas anyway. And that can be some megalopolis or whatever they call them. Having a regulation that says, you know, as process to open up, and it's to you know, go, you know, having these
we don't again have and volunteer program the issue, and they require any truck going in there into the they have control.
Yeah, because you guys, don't you have, jurisdiction over fleets, right? In the
So fleet rules when it comes to trucks. There's
the rule that, between cities and the
and we Valley with the Port of want to put in their trucks, and off one thing, but it was we wanted. So we because the hour was the certainly in court on beach. So East it was one of the places, and TV. I thought they're appealing now, being appealing. There's no there, man. That was we brought up. They didn't do it.
Okay, so let's go in the permit with the environmental impact report.
We don't approve it to it. It's the so it's in the city plans, whatever it was. Really, they're the ones that the document. They send it out. We just but we found again there are on. But again, if it's another agencies, all we do is make comments to it.
So up to the individual city or county, right? Is
The agency project.
so that'd be a planning department for each of their.
Go ahead.
On the emissions, but there's everything from if the purple side or there's artists or we come on it. Have a lot of agencies, trucks and where they emission those trucks, and we see there wasn't sufficient we feel is efficient, then we get or with the typically large are going to have and we find a middle ground. Middle ground may not. It was complete legation, so that's a win-win situation. But it's not the district making something easy. Just like myself, when something goes up, I may comment process, but focus on the things we I want to do. So and that category, you should be more analyze more cases felt very was insufficient.
And make we can say for so like in the instance of the skid, LA has the and when you use division that we have
a lot of say commenting response to find document and things are very short as we're considered correct is that's generally at where you given no that what you raise is fair enough. Why didn't you respond to it? You're asking why they just ignore those things and that they did analysis.
So because a lot of these EIRs are not, we've done is change the criteria in how you calculate. So let's say, for instance, if there's a criteria that makes the consultants prepare reports to calculate based upon the standards. So the projects roll around these days now have full implementation of the EPA report on our during the course of the permitting process facility, you guys have gone and based on this criteria that we've set, you guys need a developer and a business owner to come with regulation.
Yeah, typically our planning department is a big function of what they do. Challenges is not everything goes to EIR. Often challenges is too much of all kinds of agencies, etc. You'll see it's minimal. You're usually only going to see for a very large project, but planning department does review these things. Where you have to take a quick decision on them, but it's something that it's a big part here in evaluating those projects.
I think consultants have to by the law and whatever standards there are. And if they, but it's the bare minimum. But it's the bare minimum. Yeah. But you're up against.
Yeah, but you got federal law, you got the here for final regulation. It's great. That's been literally crawl and the approval of that. It's 20 years.
It's just a standard.
The tier 4 just a new standard for models. Stand after that model year. It does not require anyone to put this truck, and you could still purchase a used truck. But if you do a truck, all the new trucks from that model year on will have new required standards. So it does take the turnover for a heavy duty vehicle. Specifically, these trucks can last 20 years. That's the
I think probably, I guess today is really require them to fund restoration. Put
they should be doing it with the billings that they receive in profits. So that would be part of a agenda item to where they are in compliance.
They don't have to comply with that. No, they don't. That's open source. They comply with whatever the federal rules are. But for us, they don't have to comply with our rules at all.
Okay.
Now, that's what I'm saying is that the only way for them to incentivize them. Other than that, they're going to. There's not a business model for that. I mean, it doesn't make sense for them to spend money. They don't want to spend money. Not until they're forced to spend money.
We need to talk to a congressional and.
So it's federal
and
government. It's federal
All right,
government. Yeah.
thank you.
Retta.
I'm sorry, but nobody did anything, it seems like, especially when it's involved. There needs to be regulations.
Absolutely. That's federal government.
I know.
When it comes
You can turn local industry or whatever, you know, they're always
to and we can obviously meet their whatever standards we set, whatever rules we set. But when it comes to mobile, I mean,
now, but I mean, another
absolutely,
control.
absolutely, yeah.
Why rulemaking is important, regulatory is important, because you don't want to do it out of bill or the community. It's, they have to be made to do it. Unfortunately.
So
Is that judged that
sure. That's always the option.
sort of public response is not doing because
Logan, it's called Eastern Community, and the way that organization started because of the yards there in Commerce and housing communities. But it's always that. I mean, I'm on a tour with EPA and CARB, so you know, I had been to Commerce, to the northern side of the southern side. Went to the southern side, I realized that there's home. They're literally they're walls. This is not even a street. It's a rail yard. I was like shocked. You know, that it was so close, but do it. Can we do what you can do about it? You know, love you to be able to regulate more control over our destiny. Until we get that, you know, limited. So, next item is. Do you want to say anything, Retta? I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Retta? Did you? Daniela Ariano, she are and our staff who over.
Hey everyone, thanks for. So again, as Derek mentioned, my name is Daniela Arellano. I'm the Senior Public Information Specialist, and one of the topics I focus on is environmental justice. And I'll give you a quick recap on what's been happening with the Environmental Justice Community Partnership, which is an effort to solidify and strengthen the relationships that we have with environmental justice communities in all of our 4 counties. So part of what our responsibilities have been is to conduct a series of workshops. The purpose of the workshops has been to collect information about the community and to provide community stakeholders with information about what we do and how we can best serve them. So as of now, we've completed a series of 4 workshops, 1 in each county, and these are that we've used to promote the event, and I do appreciate that some have taken time to put into. We've conducted an extensive research, of these workshops. For this is just a list of the outreach that we conducted for Los Angeles. And some pictures illustrate exactly what was happening. So we provided maps where they could indicate what some of the community air pollution and the workshop. Approximately 111 and 111 pre-registered and 70 that actually came to the workshop. And what we did was we conducted a survey at the end to get back on insight and what they felt experience was like. So from how they saw to how in their ability for air concerns. And at a scale of 5, we received a 4 for the Los Angeles. And feedback we received from events and they like most and like least are noted here. Heard about the event through African Americans, which the for outreach there as well. List. We did it for middle school and the event registration to and day of was approximately 40. 1 through 5, we averaged approximately 4.3. And here's some of the feedback that we received during the workshop, and mostly from friends or Facebook. For the thermal workshop, we partnered with Comité Cívico del Valle, all incredibly helpful in supporting our event. And this is some of the outreach that was there. And so approximately 100 people registered for this event, and this was extraordinarily well attended. We had approximately 100. The feedback we received questions about the event, and on a scale from 3, we received the 3-point overall score. And here's information about the feedback. All of the is in your questions about the and go back really. We partnered with the San Bernardino Valley College with the radio station there and CCAEJ. And Orange County, this is some of the what we did in Orange County versus the other workshops. So we have an advisory council that provides feedback on how we conduct events and the different was that we should combine the workshop and for this particular event. So what we're doing is we're having award ceremonies. One recognize environmental justice leader in the area. We did it so we also recognize individual for 37 people have to do the day up, and we just have a lot. We received an average 4 point. It's a part of the community around the Rainbow Recycling Facility. It's called Oak Comunidad. We partnered Comunidad with Accord El High Center, and this is some of the feedback we received for that event. And last but not least, we have upcoming environmental justice who receive. I put some. I'm hoping that you take what we would ask is that the event together a variety, and it's on Wednesday, November 6th to 30 p.m. We are opening the door at 30 a.m. for registration. It'll be an all-day event that really gets people together from different industries to talk about environment. We'll be providing breakfast and lunch, and it's a cathedral in downtown Los Angeles. And I brought more flyers because we can maybe grab a stack of about 20 and help distribute or grab more and drop those off at school. I'm happy for copies. I have copies over here, so if I have some here, if you could provide maybe 1 point of extra credit or more for attending, that would be great, and we'll do hope to see you there. Parking and will
We're but it's definitely reduced price.
So it'll be at least validated.
correct.
You tell them you're there's free credit class. If you
Is
give it
it-
to them,
Is it free registration?
free registration. Everything is free. No charge. Actually, but other than that, not yours. But when people want to buy a table, yeah.
Agenda for this?
We're going to. Yes. If out if you want to email we sent you the in that among the speakers is an environmental justice activist from Flint about the issue that has gone through with the Flint water system.
You just answered that you'll send an online version of the flyer so we can put it on as well. A couple of questions. Shops. Did the attendees get translated on the board or?
So what we did, and Danielle expanded, but we also was all part of educating them.
Oh, I
Also part of hearing from them on their concerns.
right.
You know, it had the governing board hear that, and we had a couple of governing board members at two of the meetings, but hear it for going out there, taking care of the. But yeah, they had opportunity to let us know their concerns in their own communities. And about it. We're glad that they were able to give us that because it is important.
Just remember a year ago when Dr. Burke, he's the chair,
Yes.
was interested in getting
Oh, yeah.
these events. I was wondering if people that came understood. Hopefully that was going to get.
Yeah. And board over in Riverside, meeting that was organized up and said we out we're not, but sometimes it's good to hear from them. They want to. They did. That we hold town hall meetings in we are going to be hosting a hall meetings once we get the location identified and secured. Then everyone know here where the meetings are going to take place.
Comment had to do with the protesters at the San Bernardino workshop. What was the nature of their concern?
Their concern was AQMP. The AQMP was released that day. They felt that we should have released the public. It was a first, and I mean, they have their right. Their concern. I'm not going to decide. Not a concern. Things from that, but the other how it's changed. How the board is tilted one. That was their main concern they had at the meetings.
And one of the things I wanted to add is that the information that we get in the workshops, we use that information directly to develop a program for the actual conference. Because that confused about what we have jurisdiction over versus what we don't. And there's some confusion about exactly what we do versus other government agencies. We have 4 breakout sessions during the program that are providing information to attendees to the type of information patterns and information from these workshops. So is providing information about what it is, types of complaints that are. They are also planning to provide some information, some examples, which, for example, a nonprofit or a community group or a government work together to successfully a environmental community inspire community members and servers to take the issues that will hopefully make a difference in their community. Some of the information that we use to generate this.
Will the concern that was raised at city, about the makeup of the government be shared with the governing board?
Oh, they were there. They were there. We had 2 governing board members there. They got them. There are the questions. Go on, Rafael.
So, just maybe put a couple billboards or with some articles along like major ways in those communities that are negatively affected by pollution, birds, that just to bring awareness that there's an agency that regulates and somewhat that can help. It would be nice to see saying help our community, report excessive pollution, small. And we go back to that because you guys have so many different programs, so many, like small group knowledge. I think Public, although you've really partnered with a lot of these small environmentalists, the law is hard. So if it could greatly affect those people that see that helps.
I mean, I'm not going to toot our horn anything, but I will say that this year, going out to community meetings, it's skyrocketed to the point my budget has been go out is just that there is investment time, investment, the whole logistics, be it the translation, translation, $25 a meeting, and all this are the things I want to say 30 meetings, and it's we're going to continue to do it. We're not going to just that. There's we try to get the word about the meetings. We have people at a meeting. Sometimes we get 30 people at a meeting. And meeting, sometimes they're, a lot of
all that.
Not a lot. A lot of meeting. A lot of
I mean, just me. I haven't even heard about meetings.
Yeah, they're together though. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Then we'll go to next item, which is public comment. Okay, just want to say one thing. One of my staff members promoted, and being promoted, she's going to a different. That's tremendous help. Meetings here. I just want to acknowledge and thank her for her help. And that'll be it for the meeting. We'll adjourn our next meeting for the 7th. And look forward to it very much.
Thank you. I'll see you at the next meeting then.
Absolutely.
Please, the for everybody, please.
So are you teaching at UCLA?
No, Cal State LA.
Oh, Cal State.
Yeah,
that's
Doctora.
Ay, mucho gusto.
Daniel Morales a la orden.
Yeah, and I'm Alicia Enciso.
Alicia, nice
Nice
to
to
meet
meet
you.
you.
This is
Is this your first meeting?
My first.
Yes,
Yeah. brand new member. So thank you very much. I'm excited. And it's so relevant to the class language. So
what is the team?
I'm in public health as well. So oh, I'm gonna be there. Yeah, I'll be there.
Something else that you teach your students is that if you put landscaping on the side, but then you have a freeway or a train track, if everybody's doing it, it helps the people that are traveling. So there's certain environmental things that we need to educate.
Back on that note, Danielle, I'm gonna go stop the webcast, so I'll be right back and I'll make a folder.
Okay,
So just leave it all there and then I'll make the folder
thank
for
you
you.
for all your help.
I'll be
I
right back.
appreciate you hanging.
No.
here.
Promote and find out who can help us build schools and having gems for our kids. They shouldn't, if the air quality is so polluted, we need to change the environment. It's like, if you think of USC, remember they built those baseball and volleyball courts that are indoors? And that's something that we need to think about and talk to our Atlanta Beach. Yes. We need to get our, yes, here, but we need to talk to, obviously, they're limited in what they can do now. I mean, BNSF, we're helping them clean up their locomotives. Does that make sense when they're $1 billion corporate profit corporation?
That's why I think that it's more of the public communication.
Oh, no. I think that people are wimpy about it. You know, I mean, they have lawyers, they have money, they do a lot of, they have a lot of stuff. They need to help us motivate people to have a coverage. Yes, because if not, I was here all day thinking, you know, I'm spending more time because my mom lives on the west side. She's 92, but she doesn't go out that much. But all the people are walking their kids that are, you know, walking around the neighborhood are dying a little bit more every single day. And there's so many basic things that they don't know about the environment they live in.
It's unfortunate. I mean, we talk about greening cities, right? And how green spaces and parks can influence physical activity and obesity. But it also depends on
In those areas?
If it's along a major highway, then you're actually a bigger exposure.
Yes,
to
exactly.
So
That's
it depends.
But that's why you need indoors.
Right.
You know, and maybe in this case we promote going to the mall, especially like the carousel mall. Yeah.
I hate malls.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
but no. In our case, we have a mall that is not as populated. I mean, it's middle like 20%.
Or on those days that are